The afternoon sun blazed mercilessly over the sprawling suburbs of Adams County, casting long shadows across the cracked pavement. Inside a crowded bus rattling down Route 9, Ashley Blake sat with her thoughts swirling like a summer storm. Her mind was a turbulent mix of hope and dread, having just left a job interview in Denver that had gone unexpectedly well. Yet the shadow of her troubled relationship with Cody Marlowe loomed large, an ever present specter in her life. As the bus bumped along the highway, Ashley distracted herself by watching the scenery blur past. Just then, a voice cut through the hum of conversation and the engine's drone. "Mind if I sit here?" The question came from a man whose presence seemed to demand attention. She nodded, allowing him to take the seat beside her. "Ethan," he introduced himself with a smile that didn't quite reach his eyes. There was something unsettling about him, an intensity that both intrigued and unnerved her. They exchanged pleasantries, Ethan's words smooth as silk, yet carrying an undercurrent she couldn't quite place. The conversation drifted from weather to work until it circled inevitably to personal matters. "Relationships can be tricky," Ethan remarked casually. "Sometimes they end up costing more than they're worth." His words hung in the air like smoke, stirring something deep within Ashley. As they talked, Ethan's questions became more probing, his interest in her life disconcertingly acute. It was as if he could see right through her, peeling back the layers she kept hidden even from herself. "You ever feel trapped? Like there's no way out?" he asked softly. Ashley hesitated, caught off guard by his perceptiveness. She thought of Cody, their fights over money, his temper that flared without warning. How she sometimes felt like she was suffocating in their tiny apartment filled with unspoken resentments. "Yeah," she admitted finally, her voice barely above a whisper. Ethan nodded as if he understood completely. "Sometimes," he said slowly, "you just need a little push to change things." There was a weight to his words that lingered long after they'd been spoken. As the bus pulled into its next stop, Ethan stood up abruptly. "Good luck with everything," he said with a cryptic smile before disappearing into the throng of passengers disembarking. Ashley watched him go, a chill running down her spine despite the oppressive heat outside. The encounter left her shaken, as if she'd glimpsed something dangerous lurking beneath the surface of normalcy. That night at home was no different than any other. A tense silence filled the space between her and Cody. But beneath her usual routine of cooking dinner and watching TV lay an unfamiliar restlessness. Around midnight, Ashley sat alone at their kitchen table, staring at nothing in particular, when Cody stormed in from their bedroom. Another argument simmered on his lips about bills and responsibilities, a loop she was tired of reliving. In that moment, Ethan's words echoed in her mind, a little push to change things. And for the first time, she considered what life might be like if she took a different path. Suddenly, there was a loud crash from outside, a sound like breaking glass, followed by muffled voices arguing in the night air. Ashley jumped up, heart pounding, as she peered cautiously through the curtains, but saw only shadows shifting under streetlights. Returning to the table with nerves on edge and adrenaline surging through her veins, Ashley couldn't shake off an inexplicable sense of foreboding that something had already been set into motion, something irrevocable and terrifying. The crash resonated in Ashley's memory as she lay wide awake on the couch, the shadows outside her window stretching into shapes that danced with silent menace. She forced herself to breathe evenly, but the sound of glass shattering, a prelude to chaos, echoed in her mind. Her heart thumped in her chest as if trying to escape the cage of her ribs. Cody's voice snapped her out of her reverie. "Did you hear that?" he muttered, his tone a mix of annoyance and fatigue. Ashley nodded, though she knew he wouldn't see it in the dim light filtering through their threadbare curtains. "Probably just some kids," she replied, though something in her gut told her otherwise. Cody grunted in agreement, retreating back to the bedroom, leaving Ashley alone with her thoughts once more. The next morning unfolded with an eerie normalcy that belied the tension simmering beneath the surface. Ashley went through the motions of everyday life, making coffee, scrolling through job listings, trying to forget the unsettling encounter with Ethan. and the strange disturbance outside. But a nagging sense of urgency pressed against her consciousness. As she glanced over at Cody reading the newspaper at their tiny kitchen table, she felt an unfamiliar pang of distance between them, a canyon that had silently widened over time. Later that day, as Ashley walked through their quiet neighborhood, she noticed a police car parked haphazardly by a nearby house. The sight of uniformed officers and yellow tape fluttering in the breeze sent a chill down her spine. She quickened her pace, eyes fixed on the ground ahead. Inescapably, she found herself drawn back to Ethan's words, a little push to change things. They lingered like a specter clinging to her every thought. As evening descended, Ashley found herself standing outside Cody's door once again. The air was thick with impending rain, and distant thunder rumbled a low warning. Inside, Cody was pacing, his face twisted in an expression of frustration. "Can't believe they're questioning everyone," Cody groused as he threw himself onto their worn-out sofa. "I mean, what do they think happened?" Ashley hesitated at the threshold, feeling the weight of words unspoken between them. "It's their job," she said finally, stepping inside. Their conversation stalled as they watched TV in silence, each lost in their own thoughts until an unexpected knock shattered their fragile truce. Cody opened the door to reveal two detectives standing under the porch light's harsh glare. "Evening," one of them said briskly, flipping open a notepad. "We're investigating an incident from last night. Wondering if you heard or saw anything unusual?" Ashley's pulse quickened as Cody shook his head dismissively. "Nah," he replied curtly. "Just some noise. Nothing more than that." The detective's gaze shifted to Ashley, sharp and discerning. "And you? Anything you'd like to add?" For a moment, Ashley's mind raced back to Ethan and his unsettling presence on that bus ride, the promise hidden beneath his cryptic smile. She swallowed hard but managed a steady reply. "No, nothing out of the ordinary." The lie tasted bitter on her tongue. After they left, Ashley felt an oppressive silence closing around them once more, one that spoke louder than any argument ever could. As she turned away from Cody's probing look, her phone buzzed with an incoming message, a blocked number lighting up her screen with a chilling simplicity. "You know what needs to be done." Her blood ran cold as she stared at the words glowing ominously against the dark backdrop of uncertainty stretching out before her, leaving everything unresolved yet urgently demanding resolution. Ashley's hands trembled as she stared at the ominous message on her phone. The unsettling weight of its meaning pressed down on her, demanding action she wasn't sure she was prepared to take. The quiet of the apartment felt suffocating, broken only by the rhythmic ticking of the wall clock, a countdown to some unknowable fate. Cody, oblivious to her turmoil, flipped channels with detached impatience. His presence, once comforting in its familiarity, now seemed an unbearable reminder of everything that had gone wrong. Every unspoken word between them added to the tension, a taut string ready to snap. "Everything okay?" Cody asked, his eyes not leaving the screen. "Yeah," Ashley replied automatically, pocketing her phone and forcing a smile. But inside, her thoughts were anything but settled. The morning arrived, draped in a heavy fog that matched Ashley's mood. She moved through the motions of routine: coffee, breakfast, checking emails, each task performed with mechanical precision. But beneath the surface, an anxiety simmered, threatening to boil over. Detectives had resumed their canvass of the neighborhood, their presence a constant reminder of the previous night's disturbances. As Ashley stepped outside to fetch the mail, she caught sight of Detective Collins speaking with an elderly neighbor across the street. His gaze swept over her briefly before returning to his notepad. Ashley's heart skipped as she rifled through bills and junk mail. A plain white envelope caught her eye. No return address, just her name scrawled in hurried handwriting. She hesitated before tearing it open. Inside was a single piece of paper bearing a chilling message. "Tonight is your chance. Don't waste it." Her breath caught in her throat as she scanned the street for any sign of who might have delivered it. The fog blurred outlines into indistinct shapes, offering no clues. Back inside, Ashley struggled to focus on anything other than the letter and Ethan's haunting words from days before, a little push to change things. Her mind spun in circles around what needed to be done and what she was willing or unwilling to do. Cody returned home later than usual that evening, his mood sour from work frustrations he made no effort to conceal. He slumped into a chair without greeting her, rubbing his temples as if trying to banish some persistent pain. Ashley, he started, but stopped short as if reconsidering whether his words were worth voicing. What? She snapped more sharply than intended. Forget it, he muttered dismissively. Silence reclaimed its hold on them until Cody sighed heavily and excused himself to bed early. Alone again in their dimly lit living room, Ashley felt an overwhelming sense of urgency gnawing at her insides. The detective's visit earlier haunted her thoughts. His probing questions about last night's events seemed innocuous then, but now felt laden with suspicion. She knew time was slipping through her fingers like sand through an hourglass. With a resolve born out of desperation rather than clarity, Ashley reached for the phone. Her hands shook as she dialed a number she hadn't dared contact before, a number connected to shadows and secrets she'd tried hard not to acknowledge. The line rang twice before a voice answered, a voice she recognized immediately despite its distortion by time and distance. "You know what needs to be done," Ethan said without preamble, each word carrying an unnerving calmness that belied their sinister implication. Ashley's response lodged in her throat as fear tangled with urgency, a paralyzing combination that left her frozen at this precipice of decision. The phone call with Ethan hung in the air like a guillotine poised to drop, its edge sharp with implications. Ashley's mind was a cacophony of fear and urgency as she hung up, her hand trembling as if trying to shake off the conversation's lingering chill. The apartment's oppressive silence pressed down on her, a constant reminder of the decisions she faced. Cody's voice broke through her thoughts, his tone softer than usual. "Everything okay?" he asked from the doorway. Concern etched into his features. Ashley forced a smile, but it felt brittle, ready to shatter under scrutiny. "Just tired," she lied, turning away to hide the turmoil roiling within her. The night crept on with a deceptive calmness, the shadows lengthening their grip around her heart. Yet beneath this veneer of normalcy, Ashley felt the tides shifting, an inexorable pull towards something darker and more definitive. As dawn broke, painting the horizon in muted pastels, Ashley found herself standing at their kitchen window, the events of last night replaying in relentless loops. Her phone buzzed with a message, a new text from the blocked number, "Meet at noon, you know where." The words were succinct, devoid of any emotion or hesitation. The morning passed in a blur of routine tasks that failed to anchor her frayed nerves. By midday, she found herself moving through the motions on autopilot, her body guided by an unseen force towards the location etched into her memory, the bus stop where she first met Ethan. Detective Collins watched from a distance as she arrived, his instincts triggered by subtle shifts in her demeanor over recent days. He had been following leads that seemed to circle back to Ashley, each thread of evidence weaving an intricate web around her. Ashley sat on the bench at the bus stop, her gaze fixed on the horizon where heat shimmered off asphalt. The day was sweltering, a stark contrast to the cold dread pooling in her stomach. She was acutely aware of every passerby, every car that slowed as if assessing her presence. Minutes ticked by with agonizing slowness until Ethan appeared from across the street. His approach was unhurried, his demeanor unchanged from their last encounter, a calmness that belied his involvement in whatever dark turn awaited. "You came," he remarked with an unsettling smirk as he sat beside her. "What do you want?" Ashley's voice was steadier than she felt inside. Ethan leaned back casually, eyes scanning their surroundings before settling on her with unnerving intensity. "You've got choices," he said cryptically, "but you need to make the right one." Ashley's pulse quickened at the implication, choices that felt more like ultimatums cloaked in deceitful layers. She opened her mouth to speak, but was interrupted by an unexpected arrival. Detective Collins approached with deliberate steps, his presence a jarring intrusion into their clandestine meeting. "Miss Blake," he greeted curtly, casting a scrutinizing glance at Ethan before focusing on Ashley. "Detective," Ashley replied evenly, though tension coiled within her like a spring ready to snap. Collins cut straight to the point. "We have some questions about your connection to recent events," he stated, eyes narrowing as he assessed Ethan's impassive expression. Ethan stood abruptly, turning away without another word, as if dismissing both Ashley and Collins from his immediate concerns. As he walked away, Ashley felt a surge of panic, an urgency that propelled her after him despite Collins' protestations. "Ashley!" Collins called out sharply, but she was already moving, compelled by fear and desperation to follow Ethan into whatever shadows lay ahead. Ashley stumbled into an alley, desperation clawing at her as Ethan disappeared deeper into the shadows, his silhouette merging with the night. Detective Collins' voice echoed behind her, urging caution, but her feet betrayed her, drawn inexorably towards the unknown. The alley was narrow, the brick walls pressing in on either side, amplifying her ragged breaths. The sense of urgency was palpable, each step feeling like a plunge deeper into a well of uncertainty. Ethan's cryptic words haunted her, choices that seemed to straddle the line between salvation and damnation. Her pulse pounded in her ears as she pushed forward, determined to unravel the mystery that had consumed her life. Collins followed at a distance, his instincts sharp despite the dim light. He had seen too many cases where emotion clouded judgment, yet something about Ashley's demeanor struck him as different, an urgency that was more than just fear. "Ashley?" He called out again, trying to reason with her as she hesitated at a fork in the path. The moment stretched taut between them, and she finally turned to face him. "I need answers," she said, her voice a raw plea that cut through the tension-laden air. "And you'll get them," Collins assured her, his tone firm yet understanding. "But running into danger won't solve anything." Her gaze flickered back to where Ethan had vanished, doubt gnawing at her resolve. Could she trust herself to make the right call? Could she trust Ethan? The questions lingered unanswered as a low rumble of thunder rolled across the sky. In that moment of hesitation, Collins's radio crackled to life with a voice urgent and insistent. "We've got movement near Blake's apartment. Possible suspect sighted." The words jolted Ashley from her paralysis. "Cody," she whispered, fear threading through her voice as she started back towards the street. Collins caught up with her swiftly, his hand gentle on her arm as he guided her back towards safety. "We'll check it out," he promised, signaling for backup as they emerged from the alley into the chaos of city life. Back at Ashley's apartment, tension wove itself into every corner like cobwebs left undisturbed too long. The door stood ajar, a silent testament to an intrusion that had violated their fragile sanctuary. Inside, the scene was one of disarray, papers scattered like fallen leaves across the floor and furniture upturned in hurried search. It was clear someone had been here, someone looking for something specific. Ashley's heart sank at the sight of Cody's belongings strewn across their bedroom floor, their private world laid bare under harsh fluorescent lights. Colin's presence beside her was steadying as they surveyed the wreckage together. What were they after? He mused aloud, glancing at Ashley for any insight she could provide. Her mind raced back to Ethan's cryptic messages, the veiled threats and promises, wondering if this was all part of some larger game he played. But before she could voice any theories, another officer entered with a discovery that stole their breath away. In his hand was an envelope identical to the one Ashley had received, its contents chilling in their simplicity. "You know what needs to be done." The weight of those words settled heavily between them, like a harbinger of things still hidden in shadow. As they processed this new twist in their investigation, a sudden realization dawned on Ashley, a connection she hadn't seen before now, linking all these disparate pieces into one terrifying whole. But before she could articulate this revelation to Collins or even process it fully herself, her phone buzzed with an incoming message. "You're looking in the wrong place." Ashley's breath caught in her throat as dread pooled icy in her veins, the cliffhanger threatening to unravel everything they'd pieced together.